When I was a teenager, I made the decision to get into fly fishing. So, armed with a fistful of cash, I went down to my local sporting goods store to get set up with a rod, reel, and line. I didn't know anything about fly fishing equipment, had no experience, so I depended on the man behind the counter to help me out. Unfortunately, to compound the problem, he knew very little about fly fishing, so he let me run wild and pick out my own gear. I selected a fly rod that looked good and was inexpensive. The same thing for a fly reel and a fly line. Then for years, I struggled trying to make the good fly cast, thinking that it was my lack of experience and knowledge about fly fishing, which I didn't have. That was true, but I only discovered years later that I had a problem with the equipment I'd selected. So today I want to talk to you about fly rod selection so you don't make the same mistakes that I did. Stay tuned. Before we get too far along here in the discussion of fly rod selection, let's talk a little bit about the anatomy of a fly rod, the fly rod parts. This portion is referred to as the reel seat. That's the part to which you connect the reel, hold it in place. This is the grip. In most cases, the grip is going to be made out of cork. Before anything is put on it, what you have is a hollow stick, or blank if you will, made out of graphite. There are bamboo rods out there, and if you look hard enough you could probably find some fiberglass rods. But 95% of what you're going to discover, if not a higher percentage, are going to be graphite fly rods. Very lightweight, very strong material. These are guides on the rod. You'll hear some beginners refer to them as eyelets. They're guides. The juncture of rod sections are referred to as ferrules. You can buy rods that are 2-piece, and you may buy rods that have as many as 7 pieces. With modern ferrules, there usually is not a casting difference that's significant between a 2-piece, a 3-piece, a 4-piece, or a 7-piece rod by a reputable manufacturer. So don't shy away from that. And finally, this little hook item right here, or thing that looks somewhat like a guide, is referred to as a hook keeper. Yeah. If you go to select fly rods, you go out there to see what's available, you're going to have a lot of choices. In fact, it can be overwhelming. Let's start with the rod length, kind of narrow things down to what might suit your needs. Okay. If you look hard enough, you'll find rods that range in length from 6 feet to 16 feet. 16-foot rod, you need 2 hands to cast it. That's a long lever. So 2-handed rods are generally those that are 12 feet or more. Right? Most beginners are going to start somewhere in this length rod, this range, 8.5 to 9.5 feet. Okay? Having sold rods at the retail level for more than 20 years, I can tell you that the single most popular rod length, beginner and expert, for people that fish for trout and bass, is 9 feet long. Okay? Can't go wrong with a 9-foot rod. The other thing you want to consider, just looking at the rod, is the number of guides on the rod. It's an important consideration, especially if you buy a premium rod. So I'm talking about rods that are $200 or more. Right? You don't have to spend $200 on a rod, but if you do, you want to make sure you're getting your money's worth in performance. So here's the rule of thumb that you want to follow. Okay? Counting the number of guides, you want one more guide than the whole number of feet of the rod length. So if you buy a 9-foot rod, you want to count those guides, not including the tip top. Right? You should have 10 guides. A 9.5-foot rod, drop the fraction. It also should have 10 guides. 8.5-foot rod, drop the half, got 8. One more than that's going to be 9. Now, if you buy an $80 fly rod to get started, and the rule of thumb that I would suggest to you, it's like any other thing that you might buy. Equipment, clothing, sporting gear, buy the best that you can afford. It'll serve you well and perhaps last for a lifetime. Same is true with fly rods. But if you're going to buy one, let's say under $100, you still want to count the guides. And if you buy a 9-foot rod, if I can find one with 9 guides or 8 guides, it's going to be close enough. It'll do to get you started. Okay? But if it has 6 or 7 guides, stay away from it. The reason you need to consider the number of guides is when the rod bends during the cast. Okay? If there aren't enough guides for the line to follow closely the curvature in the rod, the line will slap the blank in the spaces between those guides, which is too far if you don't have enough guides on it. Okay? That will kill the cast, especially when you're trying to lengthen your line during the cast. It creates too much friction. Okay? So count the number of guides. Consider that as an important criteria in the rod you select. I wish I had known that when I was 14 years old. Before you select a fly rod, you want to know what kind of fish you want to fish for. Where do you want to start? You need to know that it isn't one size fits all. A rod designed to give you maximum enjoyment, castability for fish this size, so we're talking crappie, bluegill, small trout, it's not the same rod that you're going to land that 10-foot marlin on. Length won't be your clue. Little rod, short rod, little fish. Long rod, big fish, doesn't work that way. For little species up to the biggest species, you can use a 9-foot rod. But the thing you need to look for, the thing you need to be aware of, is the designated fly line that will be best cast by that fly rod. That's your clue to the size of fish you can catch on it. Generally, fly lines have a number that ranges from 0 to 14 as their designated fly line weight. The weight here doesn't refer to ounces or pounds. It's a relative number, kind of like shoe size. I have a size 9 shoe, but it's longer than 9 inches long. So what is the 9? The 9 is a relative number, small, medium, large. So with a little bit of practice, a little bit of experience, you'll come to know fly line weights and what they mean. Okay? Again, the fly line needs to be balanced with the fly rod that's casting it. If the line is too light or too heavy, it's not going to cast well on the rod. You got to match them up. Okay. So here's your clue as to what you would be fishing for by looking at the suggested fly line weight, which you're going to find on the rod blank just above the cork grip on your rod. You turn that over, you're going to find the specs. Here's what you're looking for. Okay. Any rod that's suggested to use a 0, 1, 2, or 3 weight line, okay, that's for the smaller fish, small trout, crappie, bluegill, perch. Most of us here in the West, and that may not be your situation, but most of us are going to start with a trout rod weight. So a fly rod that takes a 4 weight, a 5 weight, or a 6 weight fly line is one where we're going to have a reasonable chance of landing a good sized trout. So maybe it's 10 inches long, we would enjoy that. But maybe it's 20 inches long, we could enjoy that too, and the rod would handle it. So unless you've got another reason, and you're going to be a trout fisherman as you start fly fishing, consider a rod in this range. When in doubt, shoot for the middle of the range. For many years I owned a fly fishing store and I sold rods at the retail level, and I helped a lot of people select rods. The single most popular combination for trout anglers when they got set up was a 9-foot rod that took a 5 weight line. However, if you're going to be a big fish specialist, you don't care about the little guys. You're after the big fish. So maybe you're looking for a trout that weighs 6 or 8 or 10 pounds. Then consider a rod up here at the upper end of the range, a 6 weight rod. If you want to be a steelhead fisherman, a bass fly fisherman, a fish for salmon or bonefish in salt water, then consider a 7, 8, or 9 weight rod. Again, shoot for the middle of the range if you don't know what you want to do. If you want to go after big salmon and saltwater species, consider a 10, 11, or 12 weight rod. And if you're after the world's biggest game fish on fly rods, marlin, billfish of some sort, consider a 13 or 14 foot rod, or weight rod. I said feet. I'm talking about line weight, 13 or 14. That's where you want to go. Okay. Now you know so much more than I did, because I knew nothing when I got started in fly fishing. So you can make a wise consumer decision on selecting a fly rod. Try to select a reputable brand name, and they're out there. Just look what's popular in fly shops or big box stores that sell stuff. The other thing is, if you can, cast a fly rod before you buy it. Fly shops, virtually all allow you to do that. Big box stores, you're not. On the internet, you're not. Okay? It's kind of like buying a car without ever taking it for a test drive. If you've got a friend that has a rod that you can cast and you can buy one similar, that's a good start. Okay? But if you can, cast it before you buy it. Wise consumer decision. With that, I hope you found this helpful. When you go out to select a fly rod, good luck, good fishing, and keep your fly in the water.
Have a fly fishing question? Go to gormanflyfishing.com. At the bottom of each page on the website is my email address. Contact me via email to ask your question, and I will answer it. Your question may be selected to be answered by a video I create. With your permission, I will reference you in the video by your full name and the city or town in which you live.
This is Tiny Cat's form of protest. She says that she needs a better place to sleep. And until I get her a nice fleece bed, something warm and cuddly, she's going to sit in the sink so I can't shave and can't use it.